Ember Power here, and welcome back to a new video. So initially this video is going to be me talking about some new card reveals, which admittedly I will incorporate into this video because it fits the theme really well. But basically, as I was reading through these translations for some admittedly pretty underwhelming card reveals for Pokemon Card 151, which I do expect to be fully revealed by the end of this week. So depending on whether or not this video goes up within a week or it's saved for the middle of June or something random like that, hint hint, then it will depend on like how badly this video ages in terms of points that I bring up. But effectively, some of these cards are pretty bland, pretty terrible. But one comment in particular on Pokebeach did really spark my interest, which was this comment by Chaos Trainer that said, "At this point, it feels like they want this set to just be its own format." Which is obviously not a positive statement. It's aimed at the fact that these cards are pretty bland and pretty terrible. Like, they interact with each other, which is pretty cool, but we have seen a lot of bad cards revealed from Pokemon Card 151. You would think at this point they would just save all the card reveals for the full set reveal or reveal some cards that are, a bit better, basically. But this comment still, like, it stuck with me for a little while, and I thought about it and I thought about it, and then I said to myself, well, what if this set could be its own format? Now, you know me by now, I do like custom formats. I think they're really cool. Been messing around a lot with 10 types random battles format, thinking about how decks could be made in that one, as well as my own formats, such as the Trunk League and EAB, GLC even, which of course isn't my format. But I'll try and remember to leave a link to those formats in the comment section, or the description, I should say. But either way, I just thought it was interesting to bring this up because it could honestly be a way of making sets at least a little bit more playable, even if it is for just a couple of games with friends or, and maybe even a small event or something like that. So I just wanted to take a quick look at some of these cards and basically assess the power level of Pokemon Card 151 and then talk about why it could be a good format, basically, and also why there could be a couple of problems. So just reading over these cards, which you've probably already done while I've been talking, but basically Electabuzz has the attack electric combo that does 10 damage, and if Magmar is on your bench, this attack does 40 more, so it can do 50 damage for 1 energy, which doesn't seem that impressive, but in a format that is very, very self-contained in a cube setting, this could honestly be not too bad. It's decent, especially if you're going second. Then we have Magmar, which has the attack flare combo. For 2 fire and a colors does 80 damage, and if Electabuzz is on your bench, this attack does 80 more damage, which seems pretty difficult to charge up, but there is a Vileplume from the set which would allow you to accelerate up to 8 energy from the top 8 cards of your deck, I should say. And then people have been theorizing that the Gloom also has a similar ability, because Gloom definitely had an ability on the very blurry full picture image that we got of the set when it was first kind of revealed, I guess. So we do think that Gloom will have a similar ability, which means that could be a decent combo and a decent way of accelerating energy. So could this actually work? Well, there is several other cards to suggest that we maybe could get, a bit of a format out of Pokemon Card 151. Hitmonlee has the attack Tornado Kick, which does 10 damage spread, which in fairness is fairly underwhelming, even by smaller format standards, but just here and worth bearing in mind. We also have his Dragonite, which has the ability Jet Cruise. Your Pokemon in play have no retreat. And then it has the attack for Water Lightning. Dragon Pulse does 180 damage, and you discard the top 2 cards of your deck. So honestly, this is a kind of card that I expect to see in a theme deck, which should give you the rough idea of the power levels that we're dealing with here. But then we see an interesting card called Dodrio, which I think could be either really good for this idea of turning Pokemon Card 151 into its own format, or really bad. So why I think it's really good is because it has the ability Rampage Draw that says you may put a damage counter on this Pokemon, or you must, in order to use this ability. Once on your turn, you may draw a card. So it doesn't necessarily say that this is a once per turn kind of thing. So assuming that, with that bearing in mind, I guess, you could use up to 4 Dodrios that you have in play. And then the attack does 10 damage and 30 more for each damage counter on this Pokemon. Now, for those of you playing in the Sun and Moon era, this will be eerily familiar because it's basically the same as in Broken Bond Spiritomb. Admittedly, that Spiritomb didn't have the draw 1 effect, it just had the building spike place a damage counter, which was still a pretty cool ability. And honestly, Spiritomb was a really, really solid deck, and definitely a very fun card to mess around with, But besides the point, why I think Dodge Rio is both good and bad is on the good side, it's the only card really we've seen that allows you to draw cards. So at least this format would have its own draw engine. And but kind of like the bad thing, I guess, is that Raging Beaks could be a very, 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 very strong attack because of the limited gust in the format. Because typically, if you say that you can only build decks from one set, that only means you like that. I'm really fumbling the words in this video, but like, it doesn't just mean that you can only use the Pokemon. It means you can also only use the trainers as well. So that was the point I was trying to make there. So effectively, from the trainers that we've seen for this set, they are very, very underwhelming. And that's honestly my biggest concern about trying to turn this into its own kind of like generation style Gen 1 format, is because the trainers are just kind of bad. Now, there was a bill revealed recently which allowed you to look at the top 8 cards of your deck and then take any number of Pokemon, which, in all fairness, is pretty decent if you're playing 4 copies of it and there's no other way to really find Pokemon. But then the only other trainers that we've had revealed so far are Leftovers, which is an underwhelming heal card, Erica's Invitation, which is essentially like a gust effect, but you have to reveal a basic Pokemon from your opponent's hand and then bring it into the active spot as a form of gust. And then I believe there's an item that removes weakness, and then another item that allows you to force your opponent to reveal their hand, and then you take a Pokemon from there and shove it back into the deck or something. So until we've seen all the trainers, which admittedly could be this Friday, we don't know if there's enough support for this format. But ultimately, this could be a pretty cool idea as a concept. You just have like a lot of fairly underpowered weak Pokemon that won't really do anything in expanded or standard, and maybe not even GLC. But if you kind of give them their own format to work around with, then it could be decent. So just a possibility, I guess. I'd also like to spend a little bit of time just talking about the idea of maybe mixing formats to create one single price format, because one thing that you'll notice with single price formats is that they are incredibly difficult to balance correctly, because single price Pokemon, as put it well by Omnipoke, are pretty cannibalistic. If there is one good deck, it typically dominates the rest of them, i.e., something like Regigigas, Rapid Strike Malamar, Zoroark, or Lost Zone, even. So single prize formats, very difficult to balance. But if you take into consideration some smaller formats, so for example, there was an event that was held fairly recently that you could, I did do a video on this by the way, where you could only play Pokemon and trainers from the Scarlet and Violet base set, and it was single prize. So, cards like the new Pawmot, the new Annihilate, even the new Miraidon and Patrisu were all very, very good cards in the format. Even Dondozo Tatsuguri was like one of the best decks. So honestly, that can show that you can create some pretty cool decks, and it forces players to get really creative as well because they don't have access to a wider card pool. So that is kind of the downside, I guess, is the limitations. But at the same time, the limitations do force people to be at least a little bit more creative. So why does that matter for this format? Well, I think it could be important because what if you combined Scarlet and Violet base set with Pokemon card 1051 and then maybe even Paldea Evolved, providing you don't think Reverse Energy is too overpowered, and then you could combine that with, Scarlet and Violet 3, which is, I think it's supposed to be Obsidian Flames coming out in August. So honestly, if we just mix a couple of these sets together, we could have a single prize format that is really solid and pretty well balanced overall. But that's kind of like the main point of this video, I guess, is to bring up this idea of what happens if we take a couple of sets and we basically say you can only play single prize Pokemon and you can only use those sets to create decks from. Could it be cool? Could it be good? I don't know. It's just an idea. It's just an idea for a video that I thought about, and I just wanted to share with you guys. Also, something cool about this Electabuzz and Magmar is that being basic Pokemon that hit really hard, it's obviously like reminiscent of the Haymaker deck from way back in base set. And I am kind of working on the sideline, very much on the sideline. I come back to it like once every few months. But basically, I am sort of working on a Generations base one recreational set for Expanded, which is going okay. So regardless of this ever, if this doesn't become anything, if I don't do a Pokemon card 151 format or anything like that, then I am still at least working on a Gen 1 set. So there will be something along those lines. basically. It won't be like just a Pokemon card 151 Gen 1 Pokemon though. There'll be like Pokemon from Expanded brought in, so like past Dodrios, past Vileplumes, past Charizards and stuff. But that's for a later date. That's probably going to be out in late June, July-ish sometime. So definitely a long way off. But if you made it this far into the video, then I guess that's a bit of a preview. But yeah, this has been Ember Power. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think down below. And yeah, thank you for watching.